welcome everyone. I think it's time to begin. We're very pleased to see you all here. This will be the final design conversation lecture series sponsored by the Vignelli Center for Design Studies for this semester. And we hope you'll all get ready to come back for several more exciting lectures in the spring semester. So my job tonight is just to welcome you all here and to toss the ball to my esteemed colleague, Josh Owen, who will introduce our speaker tonight.
Thanks, Roger. Welcome, everyone. I have to say this is a fantastic showing, right? You're all here despite the end of the semester, and maybe in part because I like to go and beat the bushes up in industrial design, make sure that people show up. Anyway, thank you all for coming. It's very exciting. I'm personally very, very pleased to have Joe Doucet with us tonight. He's a great friend and colleague and a spectacular voice for design in this country and beyond. I've known Joe for a number of years and followed his career closely, and have had the great fortune to collaborate with him recently on a project as part of his company, which is called Othr. A designer, entrepreneur, inventor, and creative director, Joe Doucet is one of the most sought-after creative talents working in America today. After graduating from the Art Center College of Design, Doucet quickly began exporting his vision into product, furniture, environment, and technology to find solutions for daily and societal challenges through his design. His work deftly hybridizes function and visual appeal while conveying layers of meaning and message. Doucet believes that design, and more importantly, a designer's thought process, can play a larger role in innovation and problem solving, as well as aesthetics. He currently holds numerous patents for his designs and his inventions. Doucet's work has been exhibited globally, including the London Design Museum and the Biennale International Design in Saint-Étienne. He has received numerous international awards, including a World Technology Award for Design Innovation and multiple Chicago Good Design Awards. He was also named the only ever avant-gardian for design by Surface Magazine. In 2017, Doucet was named the 2017 winner of the Smithsonian Cooper Hewitt National Design Award as product designer, the highest honor in his field. Please join me in welcoming Joe Doucet.
Hey guys, thanks for getting roped into this. I know Josh came and dragged you all by the ear, right? Can you hear me? No? All right, that was a funny joke. You didn't laugh, so I know you didn't hear me. Nope.
Here we go. I got you.
All right.
You're good.
So they didn't hear anything you said, basically. Right. Well, that's good. Well, guys, look, I'm really excited to be here and sort of, share this half hour, 45 minutes with you, right? Something like that, yeah. First of all, this is actually my first trip to RIT. And, you might not realize, actually how fortunate you are to have the facilities that you have here, to have the staff that I've met, the access to all of the cross-discipline aspects of design that are presented here. I was really blown away and astounded, actually quite inspired. I wanted to see if I could enroll, maybe skip a term or two. But no, it was a great deal of, it was really inspiring to see the work that's going on here, and to also try to make you realize what a special place this is. Make sure you take advantage of that. It's fairly rare to find. So I thought that I would start by spending just a few minutes going over some of my work, because I know a lot of you might not be familiar with with what it is that I do. And when Josh sits down and asks me questions, it's probably better to have a little context and go oh, that's what that guy does, as opposed to someone who's just going to drone on with boring answers to questions, which I won't. I'm going to be really funny and engaging. Okay. All right. So I chose a few projects that I'm going to run through fairly quickly. One of the things that is sort of unique about my practice is that we work across a great number of disciplines. Everything from, my training, my background's in graphic design, which gave me a really strong foundation, I think, in conceptually defending your work and trying to get to a clear concept very quickly, and then trying to execute that in a way that where your message is very clear through the language of product. So I chose 10 projects that will sort of, I think, give a sense of that breadth of work that we do. Each one being a bit different from each other. For example, this is part of a program I did for Braun, which was incredibly intimidating, I have to say. When you're following the steps of like a design legend like Dieter Rams, and you're asked by the current CEO to be able to impart a new language across all of their products, to be able to pull in some things that are, become anchors to the brand. And for this project, I did, I'm just showing you a brief overview, but we did 10 different objects across 10 different categories and tried to create a cohesive language around them. And one of the things that we did was to really focus on simple details. Every product has a primary function. Here you'll see in the sort of the middle to lower right this circle that we use on everything, and this is a toaster. So you press the button, you see the toast go around. The reason why the toaster is bent forward is for two reasons. One, it makes getting toast out easier, which sounds quite pedestrian. But the second thing is that kitchens are getting smaller in urban areas, and this allows you to be able to put the appliance up against the wall where it wouldn't create a fire hazard because the heat is dissipated several inches away from the wall. And each and every product that we did for them brought that level of thinking, that depth of user understanding, and that cohesive aesthetic to the table. So I just gave you a quick example because that's an hour presentation in and of itself. Another project that I'm showing you. This was done for an auction for hurricane relief disaster. And what I chose to do was to create a product that reminded you of how close we were to imminent disaster at any time, right? It's something that should be top of mind every day. The people who suffer from these catastrophes that go around the world should be something that we are reminded of. And I wanted to find an elegant enough way to do that you'd actually want to see it. So I created a mirror that the bottom half is slightly angled, slightly distorted, and reflected in blue so that every time you walk by it, you feel like you're neck deep in water. It was just a gentle reminder and sort of a beautiful, elegant nudge that we all have responsibilities to each other. This is actually a deck of playing cards that I did and I designed. And this was one of those projects that are self-initiated that I thought, no one's really, I haven't really thought about redesigning a deck of playing cards. Like, what could you do? How much could you take away and still make a playable deck? It was really just an exercise that I gave myself, not intending to have a final product out of it. But what I realized is that, to distinguish the suits, you don't really need very much. A few symbols you're able to discern from them. And when you're playing cards on the back of the deck, you really only need, you need to distinguish whether you're looking at the front of a deck or back of the deck. And if you look at this horizontal line on the back, you realize that whether you turn it upside down or any orientation, it will always be in the same place. So that really this deck of cards was, it started as a self-assigned project. It went into an exhibit, and now it's picked up, and now it actually does very, very well for us. This was a project for Scandiform, which is a Swedish contract furniture brand. And they came to us with a fairly open brief. It was like, hey, what is Office like going to be in the next few years? Can you develop a project for us? So We created a very simple system that has tables which slot in the leg and lightings which slot in the seat and you know, creates a semi-private space. But that's not what was exciting to me about this project. And it's very hard to get across from here, but we essentially created a modular form that is assembled in the shipping warehouse and not in the factory. So all the components come stacked together. Some of the pieces are end-user assembled, but the way the pieces slot together, it actually, right before when the pieces are ordered, right before they're shipped, they're assembled in the shipping warehouse. And why that's important is because sofas and furniture are quite large and bulky to transport. And if you're taking all that wasted volume from the factory to the warehouse where they're going to be distributed, you've just basically doubled the carbon footprint of transportation. And if you can devise such a simple system that literally workers who pack bags can assemble this furniture, you've then taken a huge step out of the process. And that in of this process was the thing that I was most proud about and why I show it. This was quite simple. I was asked by Wallpaper Magazine to do a project for Milan. This is a little example of the real world, right? So they're like, hey, we want you to do this, you know, the big show in Milan, the handmade show. Okay, when is it? Well, we need it in Milan in 3 weeks. Okay, well, who am I working with? Oh, I don't know, you tell us. Okay, well, what's your budget? Oh, we don't have any money. So you have to scramble. I had met these guys out of Santa Barbara, Neil Fay, who do amazing things in aluminum and have developed a lot of new technologies in being able to mill aluminum. So I just had this idea. It's like, I want to do a wine chiller. Just because it's Italy, it's wine. Let's do a wine chiller. Called them up, and they said yes, flew out to Santa Barbara, sketched on the plane, landed, showed them this, said I wanted to do this pattern of the wind pattern that you would see in the south of France, where I want these different wines to be from. They brought in a programmer, wrote algorithms. We prototyped this in 2 days. I sat there, figuring out how to anodize these custom colors that I wanted. Walked out of there day 3 with finished prototypes and got them like a week in advance to the show. So that's kind of one of those. I put this in there just to show that sometimes, you know. It's one of the most successful projects they've ever had, and it's because it's very difficult to be able to respond under that type of pressure and to be able to pull together, you know, a project like this. But you know, it's something that you face in the real world all the time. Difficulties like this. And you know, I show this project for a simple reason: is that sometimes when you follow a thought process, it leads you in a very different place. I was asked to consider what to do with a vacant lot in New York City. Something that was owned by the city under contract, and that they were consider proposals about what they should do with the space. Naturally, the first thing I thought about, oh yeah, park, when New York needs more green space, right? Let's do a park. And then I thought, well, you know, maybe the park should give back more than just a green space and trees. You know, maybe it should provide shelter. Maybe it should generate its own energy. And I thought, that's it. It should generate its own energy. So I did a lot of research, and it turns out that really the only thing that was viable to be able to generate at least 1 megawatt of electricity at the time was wind turbines. Well, in researching that, I found there are 2 problems with megawatt wind turbines. One, they have to be set against the prevailing wind. They don't swing around like, you know, weather vanes. They have to be set against prevailing wind, which means they operate at peak efficiency 30% of the time, which sounds terrible to me. I mean, it's idiotic, 30% of the time. The second was that they're ugly as hell, which is why people push them out into the middle of the ocean and as far away from eyesight as that could be. So I thought, could we solve both of those problems together? Could we create a beautiful sculptural turbine that, you know, that would generate its own energy, and people would think of it more as a sculpture than as a blight? So I worked with an engineer, and we ran a lot of tests and figured out like what's the proper twine, how the width of the blade, the angles of the blade to be able to make these things work. But what was one of those things that actually came from this project never got made, but two important innovations came from it. One, wind turbines generate their own electricity. So I decided instead of using traditional bearing system, we would use electromagnetic levitation, which would allow us almost zero resistance and be able to break these in winds that become dangerous to the structure. The second is I put the turbine on the ground and not up top. And the reason why that was a big innovation is because servicing. You don't have to get a huge crew with a crane to service it every time it needs servicing. And those two concepts were patented and now have gone into the whole cycle chain of new wind turbines that are being developed. So sometimes you can go from what do you do with a park to coming up with patentable innovations by just following a chain of thought. That's why I show that one. And this is a whiskey decanter. And I put this in because I love it. This is, again, a very quick project. Gaia Chevekel called me up and said, hey, I'm art directing this new company. We're asking 3 designers to design something for us. She gave me a list of things, and one of those was a whiskey decanter. And I thought, no one uses a whiskey decanter anymore. I want to design a whiskey decanter. And the reason why I chose to do that is because I thought, it used to be something that you would never set a bottle with a label on it and serve your guests like a drink. And now it's almost the opposite. Brands have just taken over in terms of perception and value and in defining who you are. And I wanted to raise a little flag and make a little tiny protest gesture by creating something which was in and of itself a statement of who you are, and not reliant upon the marketing dollars of one of the brands who pay me a lot of money to do work for them, by the way. I'm not biting the hand that feeds me. But yeah, and I just decided to do you always, when you're trying to create a design, you want it to be a bit iconic. It's always really interesting to think about what is the image? How are you going to recognize that piece that you did when you see it for the first time, if you see it across the room, if you're scrolling through an image bank? So I believe that everything needs a unique character to it, and that's why I chose to take the stopper and make it not sit up straight, make it lean around the piece, make it create again, contact so that the spirits aren't evaporating, but then make a little ritual out of it. This is all based on Scotland. It's called Alba, so it comes with the instructions that you should always point the stopper towards Scotland, which is the spiritual home of whiskey. This was an interesting project. This company called Thursday Finest, and they do 3D knitted apparel, and they asked me to do a collection for them. And I thought about it, if I wanted to, maybe I'll do a tie, a 3D knitted tie. And but I thought, why would I do a 3D knitted tie? How would that make sense? So the thing about a 3D knitted tie is that basically you put in how tall you are, you put in the knot that you tie, and it prints out exactly a tie that's going to fit you right each and every time. So I thought about a tie bar, which is something that goes in between the second and the third button. And I decided to make that a design element because only with this tie, every time you tie it, it'll be exactly in the right place. So I wanted to create, again, some little iconic collection, but it's something that could only be done with this technology. And then I donated all my proceeds to Dress for Success, which is a charity that gives out access to clothing to people who need to dress for interviews and maybe don't have access to that sort of thing. So the whole thing then, as a concept, made sense to me. Okay, I did a piece of fashion, could only be done with the technology, and it made sense for me to do it because there's a charitable component. So, which I like. This is an interesting project. This is a project that came about having access to large-scale printers of corrugate, laminated corrugate. And I thought about what could you do with that? And I thought about the fact that laminated wax corrugate is waterproof, it's very lightweight, it's very cheap to manufacture, and you can do large-scale structures. So I designed this system called Pop Shelter they're meant to be airdropped for immediate disaster relief into disaster zones. They airdrop them in pallets. They can be popped up in minutes by anyone. Provide temporary, immediate shelter. There are a few things that with the design, like I wanted the interior to be sort of bright and optimistic. Something that giving you hope that things are going to get better over the next few days. And I designed a flap to be closed with a water bottle from the inside. So it creates a little sense of security in your space with a common object that's mostly found in disaster reliefs. And we engineered the whole thing to be under $5 a piece, which allows them to have wide deployment and be readily accessible. And this project is going to be offset entirely by the largest maker of corrugate materials that distributes them, and that is a shipping company that you've all heard of. Another thing, and the last project I'm showing is Othr. And if you're unfamiliar with Othr, it is a 3D printing brand where, it's a concept that I've been working on for about 5 years and raised venture funding for, venture capital, and we've been running it for the last 2 years. And we essentially collaborate with the world's best designers and create objects for the home that are made entirely on demand with 3D printing. And why that is important is that by 3D printing these objects, you see Josh's nutcracker there, is the fact that there is absolutely no waste in the process. It is one of the cleanest forms of manufacture ever devised. Nothing is made until it has a home. So we're not cutting tooling in China, making 10,000 units, filling up a container, shipping them halfway around the world, warehousing them in New Jersey, shipping them off to local retailers. All of those aspects that a product that we make and we put out in the world are completely negated by the on-demand aspect of a brand like this. So we can put as much great design out there in the world as possible, and if someone doesn't want it, it doesn't get made. It really is just intellectual property. It's ones and zeros and images that we create floating around, and it only comes into existence when someone purchases it. And that's a little bit of, I've done a lot of stuff, but that's just a brief overview of some of the projects that to either remind you of some of our work or to introduce it for the first time. So I think we're gonna sit down and talk.
Yeah, so for the sort of second part of this program, Joe and I are going to have a conversation in front of all of you, and then we'll open it up to questions as well. Okay? So give us a second while we mic up.
All right.
All right, we're live and loud, apparently.
There we are.
That was great, Joe. Thanks so much for the presentation. For the insight.
My pleasure.
I'm particularly taken aback by the scope of work that you've touched in your relatively short career, let's face it, right? Yeah. There's a lot more room, a lot more time for us to keep busy.
Yeah.
But I did want to sort of dial back and ask you a couple of sort of questions that frame your career in light of the student audience that's here. You studied communication design at Art Center, and I'm curious just to hear your take on what communication design means, because clearly it's bigger than graphic design as it was framed, but what does it mean to you in the scope of your career?
Well, I think that, communication design, communication design, which, is essentially like graphic design at its basic, at its essence, was something that really, I think it defines my work that I do in terms of product design in a very, very fundamental way. One of the things that communication design makes you think about not what you're trying to say, but what everything says. In other words, a choice that you make with a typeface, the particular shade of blue that you use. These are all things that inform and communicate. Right? They say something. They reinforce a message. This shampoo works very, well. It's very aggressive. This is a very sophisticated object for a discerning palette. These are all things that you use the tools of graphic design to help communicate. Type, color, layout, asymmetry. And when you apply that same type of thinking to product, to industrial design, it allows you to really craft what you want people to think about your product, what you want them to understand before they ever even touch it. So, the end use, the ergonomics, the way something feels in your hand, these are all imperative to good design. But if you can't engage someone before they ever even touch it, you're missing a powerful tool in your arsenal as a designer. Because let's face it, 99.9% of the interaction that someone's going to have with your product is through an image. It's through seeing it online before they ever even touch it. So it's not that one is more important than the other, it's that the two together are far more powerful than either alone.
That's great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Tell us a little bit about the young Joe Doucet. What took you to a career in design?
I don't really know how to answer that question. I came from a very rural background. I grew up outside of a very small town in Texas. I never really had any exposure to design. I wasn't even sure what that was until after I really graduated high school, I think. I had a job we had a local printer. It's a very small town. And they had a pressman that was always like, I think he sold weed out of the back. He was never in the press. So I had to kind of go run the press. And then people would come in and say, hey, we're going to open a restaurant. We need a logo. Do you guys do logos? And they would go, no. I said, I'll do it. I can draw. And so I realized I could actually doing these side jobs. I made a lot of money doing this, comparatively speaking to my, $3.50 an hour that I was making running the press. It always was one of those things that was in the back of my mind that, okay, I have this talent in art, I can draw very well. I knew I didn't want to be a fine artist because my brother was a fine artist and his life just didn't seem all that great to me. But it's one of those things I kind of stumbled upon, and once I really dug into it, and I had a deep interest in theoretical physics as well. But there was something about the problem-solving nature of design that really appealed to me. I'm heavily dyslexic, and I need to occupy. I have to have constant occupation to focus my thinking, and deep problem-solving is one of those things that brings me more joy and focus than any other activity. And graphic design tend to be that way. And then I also have a control freak nature that wanted me to not just control the identity and the color and the packaging, but the actual product itself. And that's why I sort of moved over.
Tell us a little bit about how you began your career trajectory after Art Center.
Well, at Art Center, unlike most schools I think today, you had to declare a major going in. You couldn't deviate from that major. So I wanted to study product design as well, but I wasn't allowed. So I kind of faked it. Like I started going to all the industrial design classes. I was always in the shop. So everyone in that program thought I was an ID student. And then everyone in the graphic program thought I was a graphic student. And so I sort of created this program for myself as I was going through. So when I came out, I had a very different book than your typical book. I did I'll give you an example. For my senior project, I did a one-on-one study with the very famous Polish poster designer, and I did a floating dirigible hotel. So he was just there, like, I don't know what you're doing, but it looks cool. Like, I guess if you want to do a poster for it, I can be of help. So I just had this very different book, and I was recruited right away to come to New York to work for the Arnell Group, which at the time was one of the few places that did everything from architecture, advertising, product design, graphic design, logo. My first project was designing every Con Edison truck in the fleet, you know. And I had a very special job too. I just got to float around and work on whatever I wanted to work on. And I lasted in that job for 8 months for personality reasons with the owner. I left and decided, I'm going to go work for a great graphic design firm. And I had another graphic designer who was sort of an icon to me. I went over there and worked for him for 3 months. And I quit. And I got a call from a recruiter. I was very dejected too. I got a call from a recruiter and she said, is there a reason why you've worked for the 2 biggest assholes in New York? Like, what do I need to know about you? I'm kind of worried. And I said, no, that was kind of an accident. Then I went and took a job at Kirschenbaum Bond & Partners. I actually ran their design group, ran it well enough. We did some great projects. I was named their youngest partner ever. We ended up selling the company to MDC, which is a big holding company. After my earn out, I decided I was going to go do exactly what I wanted to do, which is what I'm still doing.
You say design is a tool to shape opportunities. Can you elaborate on that?
Oh, no. Where did I say that?
I pulled it right off your website, man.
All right. I probably did then. Well, look, I think that here's what I think about design, all right? I think that most people don't understand that it is at least 50% of the success of any venture. I really believe that. I think that understanding the clear communication about reaching a specific audience, understanding precisely what the product or project needs to do and being able to craft every aspect of it to do that specifically makes a designer a very valuable commodity. And a lot of the work that I do, beyond starting, you know, these businesses and ventures that I have interest in, is I work with a lot of entrepreneurs, and I bring that aspect to the project. I'm like, if I believe in what we're doing, design is going to be the most powerful tool in your arsenal. And as a result, I become part of an owner of those companies. You know, I take equity as well as fees. And so design, in that sense, has created a lot of different opportunities and opportunities to be able to bridge through a lot of different categories. And every time you try something new that scares the hell out of you, and you go in and you do it, and you find a way to make it succeed, you gain knowledge, you gain experience, and you gain knowledge in a different category than you did before. If you're going to go and design chairs for the rest of your life and only do chairs, and I'm going to do chairs every day, and chairs are what I do, you're going to become an expert in doing chairs, and you'll probably stop innovating. Whereas if you get a broad breadth of knowledge, and you say, I learned this doing this, I learned doing this, so when I look at a chair now, I have a completely different perspective. And that's another opportunity that I think the breadth of design can create to help you grow and develop as a designer.
That's great. Your company, Othr, had a major impact on the industry when it broke. And I'm curious to hear a little bit about both how it came to be and what you think the impact has been from pushing it out.
Okay, well, I'll tell you precisely how Othr came about. I was working on a cutlery set about 5 years ago, and there was something brand new where you could order a print in steel, 3D printed steel. So I thought, yeah, okay, let me give that a try. So I ordered a fork. It was like $250, and it was really bad. It was so the quality was horrible. But it was a fork. I could use it. I had, in that moment, completely circumvented the traditional manufacturing supply chain side of things. I had created a piece of intellectual property. I had pressed a button and made a final product. And I knew how transformative that would be to the manufacturing industry, to how products are conceived and developed, to the role of a designer. A designer, I thought, okay, this is very clear. This is kind of scary. A designer is either going to be a craftsman or a creator of intellectual property. And someone's going to do this, and damn it, I'm going to do it first and do it right. Like, set the bar high for anyone who's going to come and follow and do this sort of thing. So I read a ton of books. I've done a lot of stuff with a lot of companies, but I've never gone out and raised venture capital and, built the business plan, the business model, built the team from the ground up. I usually let other people do that, but I didn't want to do that with this. I probably should have, but I didn't want to do it. Therefore I spent a good year, a lot of research. I entered a program at the New Museum's, it's the first museum-led incubator called New Inc. Gave me access to a lot of resources. I went out and raised considerable money and some venture capital. I built the strongest team that I could. I wrestled with every great designer that I knew. Said, you're going to design something for us. Let's set the bar high. Let's show people how it's done. We pay our designers a 10% of retail royalty, which is about 4.5 times the industry standard. We document them in a way that makes them the center. We partner with a friend of one friend out of Berlin who does amazing reportage, and they can get a photographer next day anywhere on the planet and do an amazing story.
Even Rochester, I learned.
Even Rochester. I thought it's largely an experiment, and I think we've had some success in normalizing this technology. I think we've had some success we've seen an impact on the way that we document our designers, as opposed to the black and white headshot that everyone else uses in the one paragraph bio. And they're black and white, by the way, because they get photos from everyone and they have to make them look alike, right? So there's black and white's the easiest way to do that. And we invest more in documenting our designers by a huge factor than we do in actually developing the product. And we've seen an impact from that, from some very major brands that have started doing the same thing. So what the long-term success or impact of what we're doing, I don't know. I think that we were first to market, but I think that's just going to be the new normal of the way things are done. I just wanted to make sure that we set the bar very high and did something we'd all be very, very proud of, and that you could sit in an institution and look at 50 years from now and go, that was an interesting moment.
Mm-hmm. I think you were successful at that. Can you tell me about a very difficult situation that you've had to deal with in your career? There's sort of two ways to answer that. I think they're difficult projects, and those are things that I love. I don't see them as challenge. When clients come to us, it tends to be because they've tried to solve that problem like 3 or 4 times with 3 or 4 different people and they can't. It just happens to be a specialty of mine to solve difficult problems because I love it. Most of the difficulties that you have in terms of your career, it's all people related. It's all like getting into a project and you don't like the CEO, something doesn't feel right, but it's a good project, a good opportunity, and you end up regretting it, and it's really hard to get out of. So I've learned to get around that by having a very simple rule. You never do business with someone you wouldn't have to your house for dinner. If you follow that rule, you'll be fine. The second you break it because it's a great project or it's a lot of money, it's a big opportunity, you're going to regret it. So it's always those challenges are people-based. Or you're not dealing, or you think you're dealing with decision makers and you're not. Right.
That's another big problem.
That's a good answer. Thanks. Tell us about the value of your professional network.
Yeah, this is one thing that I can't state strongly enough. Like 90% of your success in the future is going to be your network. It is incredibly important to understand that because every opportunity that has come to me in the past has come because of someone that I know and something that's happened. And here's sort of the key to building your network, right? And it's really important. Like, this is a real key to how you build your network. You have to give selflessly, constantly. You have to find ways to help people and never expect anything in return. And you do it once a week. You find something, you hear someone who needs something, you're like, oh, that person's looking for a job. I reached out to 4 people, hey, they might have an opportunity, and you put them together. And all of a sudden, you've made two people part of your network because you've helped them both. Don't ask for anything in return. You do this over and over and over again. You give selflessly, and when you need your network, they will be there for you because they know your character, they know who you are, and if they can help you, people will help you. If you ask for help, never do it. I swear that's the quickest way of building a network. It's the quickest way of building a great reputation as well, which is just as important as a strong network to success. Your network is everything, and that's the quickest way I know how to build a very strong network is to give selflessly. Because the takers, you know them, you see them. What's the last thing you want to do? Help them. You don't want to help someone who just takes. You don't. And it always comes out and backfires. So be a giver, and it's a shortcut to success.
Great answer. Thanks. You once hired an RIT industrial design student. Tell me about
I sure
it.
did. No one who works for me is here, so I can go ahead and say he's literally the best employee I ever had. Will Oswitz, and he was, what I loved about Will was that not only did he have a work ethic that you don't see much anymore. When I was starting out, if I didn't have something to do, I go grab the broom, I'm sweeping the floor, and if the floor is not swept, I'm just looking for something to do. I want to be useful. I'm there. You're employed. I'm grateful to have a job. It's hard to say that kind of work ethic is fairly rare, and he had that. Didn't sweep my floor. I sweep my floor. I do. I want everyone to, and I make sure everyone sees me at 8 a.m. Monday. I'm there sweeping the floor. They need to know that that's how we do it there. Problem solver, I've never seen. You could just give him anything. And he was with me for 3 years, and then a little secret, I don't pay very well. So I got him a much better job. And then at a company called Quirky, and they went, with a good friend of mine was the partner there and creative director, and then they went bankrupt, so I immediately put him at Established with my buddy Sam Donahue, did a beautiful work, and he's super happy there.
That's great.
Yeah.
Thanks. So I have one more question for you, and then we'll open it to the audience for questions. And that is that you're a husband and a dad. Mm-hmm. How do you balance family and career?
Yeah, that's easy. You just sort of set aside principles. I have 3 kids. I'm seeing my kids. I'm seeing my wife. I don't work weekends. I don't work past 5:30. That's just what I do. I get up at 5 in the morning, so that I can fill in some of that time during the day. I'm at 5 to 6. I'm doing emails and doing work-related stuff. And I get up, get the kids ready, make breakfast, and then get to work by 8:30. After I get them off to school, and then I work. I'm working. Not screwing around on anything. And everyone in my office is the same thing. They're there and they're working. We leave at that time. And the reason is because, I've worked those jobs where, and a lot of you will, where you're, sure, you get to get in at 10, but guess what? You're not leaving until 10 or 11 or 12. And if you leave before, then you feel guilty because everybody looks at you like you're out. And that is so counterproductive to doing good work. Because you spend most of your day screwing around because you're going to be working there late anyway. So maybe I'm just going to go online and shop, and maybe I'm going to be on social media. Whereas if you're there and you leave at 5:30, you better have your work done too. I don't have vacation policy. If you're going to be out the next day, I don't care. Just let me know. Take as much time off as you want, but you better have your work done. And you got to get your work done in that short amount of time. So everyone's very focused. And we do a tremendous amount of work with a very, very small team. It's always 2, maybe 3 people in the studio working with me. And I find that discipline allows me a lot of time to get that work-life balance, to recharge your batteries, to not burn out, and allows you to do a lot more work in a short amount of time.
Great. Well, I'd like to open this up to the audience for questions. So please let us know if you have any. There in the back, there's one. Can you stand up?
Yes, I can. Thank you for the great presentation. I wanted to ask, in your transition from designer to multi-business owner, what are some skills that you wish you had before going deep into the business side of product creation?
Yeah, that's a very great question. Your question was, what's moving from a designer to being an entrepreneur? What are some skills that you wish you'd had, that you didn't? I think design schools should teach business courses. I really do. I wish I had a better background I wish I'd taken a lot more courses that a CPA would. Reading spreadsheets and financials are a huge part of running any business. And although I rely on people on my team who have strong financial background and that, if you don't have an ability to be able to read a contract, to be able to understand financial spreadsheets, to be able to run a P&L, it's incredibly difficult. I wish I had taken another 2 years and done an MBA because I think there's set key skills that you would need if you want to run any business. And even if you're running a small design studio, guess what? You're running a business. It is incredibly important to understand that. And business skills need to be taught as part of design, I think. Particularly for anyone who's just, if you want to go have a job, it's not really all that important. But if you want to make your mark, if I'm going to go out there and I'm going to be a designer who does what I do, you're going to have to work for yourself at some point. You better learn how to run a business. Business skills. The answer.
You mentioned at the beginning the project you did with Brown.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned Dieter Rams.
Mm-hmm.
Who are some of your design heroes?
Yeah, that's kind of easy. I actually got to, when we were doing the exhibit at the London Design Museum for the Dieter Rams retrospective, they put my work in there as well, with some of my heroes. I was there with Jasper Morrison, who to me is like a god, with Fukasawa and with Jonathan Ive, both of which I have a tremendous amount of respect for. And he hated it. Dieter Rams hated this work. He was just staring at his little cane, sitting in his living room. He hated everything I did, which was kind of awesome. So, Dieter Rams, obviously. But, I tend to look a bit more outside of design. Like if I'm designing, if I'm interested in designing, I don't look for inspiration by other designers or what other people have done before, because I'm just going to do that. Whether I want to or not, I'm just going to do what they've done before. I try not to really look at anything when I'm working on something for inspiration. Inspiration, you build up your repository of inspiration when you're not working. That's the key. You got to have a well to draw from. If you're working in a chair and you've got tons of chairs pinned up to your board, you're doing the wrong thing, because you're just going to do one of those or two of those things together. That's what I think anyway. That's my opinion.
Other questions? Here's one.
Going back to the business stuff. So when you first started, did you find it hard to kind of convince people to join your team or to invest in you? Or did that just kind of happen naturally? And how long did that take?
Yeah, I did, but I prepared myself. I didn't go out and say, hey, I've got this great idea, give me money. I did a ton of research and found out how, I had very, very solid plans in place, very, very solid financial model. But I learned how to talk to those people. What I did is I read a lot of books that angel investors read. What are the things you should look at? How do you become an angel investor? How do you come, what are the types of things you want? I read a lot of books around how you communicate to these people. Guy Fuwazaka has a great book on the 10 things that you need to know about any business in order to invest in. What's the story you tell? What are those 10 points? Because that's shorthand to an investor. They see 50, 60 presentations a week, and they need to know, and they spend about a minute on each. So if they don't get those points right away, they don't bother with the rest. So a lot of it was about how to communicate your idea to the team that you want to bring on, how to communicate your idea to the designers, how to communicate your idea to the press, but how do you communicate your idea in a way that's understandable and digestible to people who control the money. And all that process, by the way, took like a year. And At least 60 books I read. Yeah.
More questions? There's one here. Yeah, go ahead.
Mm-hmm. No, actually what we do is we work with about 5 different manufacturers and that specialize in different aspects of 3D printing, like 3D printed porcelain, 3D printed ceramics, 3D printed steel, 3D printed precious metals. We actually commission, or that we brief the designers about the types of projects that we want to do. We develop with them, back and forth until we get a final prototype that we're happy with. We photograph that, and then we put it up for sale. And when someone purchases it, then information is transmitted digitally to that manufacturer. They print it. It gets packaged in another product with a signed certificate of authenticity with an individual number that it was made for you, and goes direct to consumer. So, mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And I've had to dig a lot into, what's today, what's on the horizon, what's coming, what are the projections over the next 15 years. Traditional small-scale manufacture is going to be eviscerated by 3D printing. Large-scale objects are going to take a little longer. You're not printing your dishes at home in the next 5 years, but in the next 10 you will. It's going to change everything. Absolutely everything, and that's a good thing. Craftsmanship will have a higher value than it does now, because people, there's always a natural backlash when technology takes over. There's the hand, it gains more value, but everything else in the middle, why would you not make something like that? It's just so much more efficient. And of better quality. It will be of better quality than any other form of manufacture.
There's a question back there.
You mentioned that you built your inspiration outside of the time you're working. Could you mention a project and tell us a little bit about how you were inspired by certain things in your life?
And this goes back to, is it around the inspiration that I have for a specific project?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, you know what, I do have a process that pretty much holds through to everything that I do. When I get a project, I sit and I think a lot about it, and I try to come up with a sentence that I want this project to do. Like, what should it do? What is its unique characteristic? What should it bring to the world? Like, what should it do that nothing else done? And then once I have a clear understanding of what I want it to do, everything else is just so easy. You kind of know what it's going to look like then. You kind of know, like, I don't sketch at all, like, until I write that sentence. And then I go, oh, okay. So I want this to appeal broadly to this type of person. That's going to tell you a lot about what the form is like. The concept is going to tell you a lot about what the materiality is like. The finishing touches, the form, the shape, the texture, the color, these things that we think are industrial design, that's just language that you put on at the end. And you can only do that when you have a clear understanding of what you're trying to say. If I can't explain this project in a sentence, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what it should do, and I don't know why I'm spending my time on it.
Other questions?
What was the last thing you drew?
Oh, I sketch all the time, but it's not, I don't sketch out ideas. Like, I'm not searching when I'm sketching. I'm communicating, I'm like putting it down on paper. And, I do a lot of the modeling myself, but I also, have, I have 3 people in the studio, and, I can't do everything. But they've learned pretty good how to read my thumbnail sketches. If I showed you, you wouldn't understand what that was, but they can read it. It's kind of like a doctor's prescription. You can just sketch it. They're like, oh, okay, I know what he wants. Yeah.
Any other questions out there?
Yeah, I came. I spent a lot of time on the plane today. I'm here for you. So if you have any questions, answer them.
Yeah, go ahead.
It seems you have a lot of creative leniency with your projects, but I was wondering if there's anything that has been on the back burner or a project that you always wanted to do but haven't had time to do, whether it's for time reasons or technical limitations.
Oh yeah, you're asking about questions that that on the back burner that I'd love to do. Yeah, I have so many, and I have a lot of projects that I really would desire to do. Like I really want to redesign coach in airplanes. All designers, you know, they really want to do. Let me get that first class cabin on Singapore Air. I've got unlimited budgets. I'll put a shower in it. You know, I want to redesign coach because it sucks everywhere. It's horrible. And I think with some thought, I think with some empathy, I think with an understanding of economics and costs, you could greatly improve the experience without increasing really the cost of everything that you're doing there. And I think that, and I understand the economics of why that doesn't work for most airlines, but I think if someone got it right, I think it would change the industry. I'd love to do that project. I would have no idea where to start. It would scare the hell out of me, but I'd love to do it. You know?
I think we may have a student doing their capstone project on that
Yeah.
you could consult with. Yeah.
Absolutely. Good luck to you. That's a hard one.
Other questions out there?
Do you have any thoughts on how designers are educated, what worked for you in school?
Thoughts on how designers are educated in school?
Yeah, like how your school experience, whether it helped you a lot or you missed something.
Yeah, I mean, my school experience was absolutely transformative. I mean, I certainly wouldn't be here had I not gone through there. But it's also what I brought to it as well. You know, I went to a very elitist like design school, and a lot of people, you know, from very different backgrounds than I did. Just no one took it seriously. And it used to be when I would be there in a crit, and people didn't show up with work, or they showed up with a half-ass work. It used to really upset me. Because, you know, I had gone out and worked a full-time job, and I had spent the whole night, I hadn't slept in 3 days, and I showed up with a project that was well thought out, that, you know, fit the brief, that I had put a lot of effort in it, and I felt like, but then I realized at some point, like, I'm not being robbed, they're being robbed, you know, they're robbing themselves, so, I'm sure every school is different, and there are aspects of it. The one thing that seems to be fundamentally missing from every design, all design education, is basic understanding of business. Like that should be mandatory part of any program. Because you know what, if you don't like it and don't have a head for it, you shouldn't go into business for yourself, and maybe you need to learn that in school. But anyway, that's one critique that I have everywhere.
Zoe?
Apart from learning a little bit about business and understanding that side of things, is there anything else you think that we should really take advantage of now before we move into the industry?
Yeah, I think you should take advantage of everything that you can try. You should try absolutely everything here, because sometimes, you know, if you go out and specifically if you take a job, you're going to be doing kind of one thing for a while, you know, until you prove yourself a little better. Another thing that, so, you know, take glass blowing, take ceramics, like get as broad knowledge as you can, because that's kind of hard to do after school, actually. You have to devote a lot of time doing that. You know, and another piece of advice that I give, because I really believe in this, because it's really been informative in my work and allows me to do things now that I wouldn't have done otherwise, is don't try to be a jack of all trades designer. I know it sounds stupid to me saying that, but do the work that you want to do. Show the work that you want to do. Always show the work that you want to do. Don't show that, hey, I can also do this and I can also do that, if you don't want to do that work, if that's not something that you love and that you think you'd want to do. Because you need to differentiate yourself, you know. You need, you know, I had this one class And it wasn't the class, and it wasn't the teacher, it was one substitute teacher that sort of changed everything for me. And it's probably a very common exercise, but it was just so revelatory. We had a homework assignment, and the homework assignment was to not do, but find 5 doodles. Yeah? So just doodles, like, not drawings, doodles. Like, sure, you're on the telephone or whatever, you know. So scrambled around, grabbed some piece of paper, we all did, put them up on the board. Then we were given an object to put in front of us, and then we all drew it, you know. And we're, you know, it's our center, man. We took 3 years of fun, and we rendered this, and this is why I hate drawing really well. You know, we sit and rendered it, and they're beautiful renderings. Everybody did that. We put them up on the board, and they all looked the same. Everyone looked the same. But you know what didn't look the same? Doodles. You put them up next to your doodle, and everyone was different. But everyone's work looked the same when they used that formalized education. And what you need to do is understand that you have to be both of those things. Every one of you is unique and has a different background, a different point of view, and you know, your work should reflect it. You know, should reflect that unique personality. That lesson I carry with me every day. I always remember, like, there's not enough doodle in that. This is what I think about some of my projects. There's not enough, like, the thing that makes me me. Anyway.
That's great. Well, I think that's a great note to end on. Joe, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Yeah, thank you.